Thank you very much. Aha. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Hopefully everyone's here wants to know about Elastic. Has anyone touched on Elastic before? Okay, not many hands, which is good because this is an introduction, not an advanced tutorial. So, who am I? My name's Daniel Platt, and you might know me as Hackzilla. I've got a few bits and projects on GitHub. I try to contribute so people know who I am, but I'm getting there. So, I work for a company called UK Web Media, and we do a lot of reports. We're in the affiliate marketing industry, and that basically means a lot of sales, a lot of costs, and I built a system that basically aggregates everything and basically tells us whether we're making money or not. Now, we had a problem. We wanted some tracking data, and we were getting lots of clicks, impressions. As you can imagine, you get a lot of clicks and impressions for very few sales. So the more sales you do, you get like 10 times more clicks, 100 times more impressions, and that will give you a lot of data. And just bundling all that into MySQL was a bit slow. So we need some way to sort of simplify it. And I tried many things with MySQL, but nothing was really cutting the mustard. The department was talking about this new technology, and I was like, well, maybe not. So I thought I'd give it a go. And as you probably guessed, it was Elastic. Now this was back in, well, even before the 1 release, so it was pretty new. I didn't touch it until version 1, because at least then it was nice and stable. So how did that help us? Well, our reports originally were running, they took like 30 minutes, if they ran at all. So with Elastic, I flattened out all the data and started putting it in there. And it helped us. Some of the reports were now running in like less than 2 minutes, which is impressive, especially considering I knew nothing about Elastic, and I was literally just flattening the data and putting it in there. So, I mean, it was good. I mean, obviously you can imagine the account managers were really, really enthusiastic about that. So, what is Elastic? It's not a relational database. It's far from relational. You have to denormalize. If you have users and invoices, you kind of have to shove everything together. You can make it distributed. In fact, it's so easy to make it distributed that I accidentally created a cluster when I booted up a second machine in the office. So it's very easy. It's REST-based. So you don't need with MySQL, you need a MySQL client to connect to it. This, you can just go using curl if you want. So it means you can use it in any sort of framework, any sort of technology. I think you could even use it using JSON, but I probably wouldn't, not JSON, jQuery, but I wouldn't do that because of obviously security. The one gotcha is, it's not real time. And what that means is, if you put a document in there, it's not going to show up for sort of like 1 to 2 seconds, depending on its workload. So if you delete a document, it'll still be available. And in one of my examples later, you'll see that. So, terminology. I'm going to compare it to MySQL because hopefully most people know MySQL. Obviously, you've got databases. The Elastic version is an index, and you've got table to mapping type, row to document, column to field. It takes you a little while for you to get used to the terminology, but once you've got that, then you're pretty much sorted. Now, I'd love to show you how the reports worked and everything, but it's proprietary. But more importantly, I wrote it in Kahana in version 2, and I'm not very impressed with it. I'd love to rewrite it in Symfony, but that's for another day. So, I'm going to demo something else. I created 2 contrived examples, and I've used Docker as a way of making sure everything sort of flows. Does anybody know about Docker? Cool, so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Those that don't, then you can download a copy of Docker from their store for Mac, Linux, Windows, and run it on your machine. It's not a problem. And strangely enough, my examples are going to be based on a talk that David McKay did here, a little while ago. I saw him at the PHP conference, and he's a good talker. Good speaker. So, once you've got Docker installed, you could just install Elastic using this simple command. It's a bit haphazard, you'd be copy and pasting it, and every time you wanted to run it. So, what you could do it in a better way. You could use Docker Compose. It's kind of like Composer, so you have a YAML file that defines all your services, and you can see in there the image, where you want to store your data, and the port number you want to expose. And then you literally just have to do Docker Compose up, and that'll bring the systems up, and likewise with down, you take it down. So, my first demo I want to give is a context database. It's very simple, very straightforward. Literally, you create some data, you put it in there, you search, you delete. So, I thought I'd start with basics. You need to create an index. There is no Symfony in this particular example. This is pure PHP using the Elasticsearch client from GitHub. And you can see there that I've created a host called Elastic. It's set up from within Docker. It's quite handy. One of the things that kind of tripped me up at first was setting the number of shards and the number of replicas. To think of shards, you have to think of, if you've got your whole data set, a shard is how many pieces you've broken into. If you've got 1 shard, it's the whole thing. If you've got 2, then you split it in half. And replicas is how many duplicates of that whole data set do you want. So if you had 2 shards and 2 replicas, you end up with 6 shards in total. Why does this matter? Well, if you want to distribute it, then it matters because it's how well your data is split up and spread across multiple machines. If you're running on a single machine like I am, it doesn't make too much a difference, certainly in the small scale. So that's why I've got just a 2 and 0 there. Now, mappings. There are data types. You've got your simple ones, your booleans, your strings, your dates. Of interest, in version 5 they've changed string into text and keyword because everyone used to use string and no index. So what they've done is, if you originally used string and no index, they've created keyword. So that's just like a single value that you don't need to do any string manipulation on, string searching. It literally is a keyword. If you want to do text searching, then you would use the text, which is, I think is a nice change they made. You've got hierarchical data, objects or nested. That's just if you want to embed objects within other objects. Effectively, it's like JSON. You've got, basically it's multiple dimensions. And you've got specialists, which I'm certainly not going to go into today, where you've got a geo points, so you can do map searching, and it's good for postcodes if you want to search in a geographical area. So how do you create a mapping? Here is a sort of a snapshot, because I wasn't sure how much it would fit on this screen today. And you can see that I've got the first name, last name, email address. They're just keywords. If I was going to implement a search facility, then it may be beneficial to use that as text, but would there be much benefit in searching for DA as opposed to David? I don't know. Certainly not in my example. You've got an example of date. You can tell it what format you want to store that date in. And here's an example of nested with the address, where you can see that I've got, again, keywords inside a nested object, and it's fairly straightforward. Of interest with Elastic, you don't actually have to specify mapping. If you don't, the moment you store any data in there, it will auto-create it for you. So if you put a string in there, it'll guess it as a string, or in this case, a text. But if you store the number 1 in there, it will store as an int. But you can't change that once you've set it up. So it's always good practice to set the mapping first, because otherwise you'll get into problems later on. So how do you add a document? Here is an example of how I form a document and I push it into Elastic. Because I don't want to manually create lots of different contact details, I've used Faker to guess everything or fake it. And you can see that I've specified the index, the type, and the body. If you wanted to create multiple documents in one go, you can also do that. It took me a while to figure out how to do this, because it replicates the API pretty close. You end up having to do one row of telling it what you're inserting, and then another row with the actual document, and then you just do that. I didn't quite like it, but once you've got it set up, it works. And once you've got a document, then it's quite easy to update it using the index. Interestingly, you have to wrap it in a doc. With the insert, if you specified an ID at this level, Elastic won't be auto-generating the ID. You could actually specify your own ID, which would match the database. And again, this is how you delete. Because it's REST, it's so simple. You're literally just telling it which ID you want gone, and it'll do it. It's pretty straightforward. They don't do anything in terms of security unless you pay lots of money. So it's not. You need to literally put Elastic behind some sort of shield. Right. One thing you can't do with Elastic is you can't change the mapping. The only way to change the mapping is if you delete the index and you have to recreate it. So what you'd end up having to do is create a new index and then copy your data across. So if you wanted to delete the index, then again, it's just as easy as deleting a document. You just specify your ID and away you go. Well, it's not even an ID, it's just... yeah. I think I may have made a mistake on that one. Okay. Searching. That's, obviously you've got all your data in Elastic and what you do with it. Well, you kind of need to get it back out again. In this example, I don't do anything complex with searching for particular names, but what I do is paginate the data. So you can see that I've got page coming in and I do the calculation and I literally just pull it out again. And in this instance, I'm just pulling out, I think, 10 at a time. So this is an example of, it's a very simple system, displays all your data, and you can delete it and view it. In the next slide, it's a video of how I've actually got the system set up so you can see it being deployed, because I didn't want to trust the Wi-Fi just in case. So, if this actually works. So what it's going to do is go git clone, and then it's going to compose and install. When I get there. But this is mostly going to be showing you how the Docker is working. And this is available on my GitHub, and there'll be a link at the end if you would like to see it. So, it takes a little while to download all the bits and pieces. And that's me connecting into the virtual machine. And there's all the example files I've created. So it's all, you can see me creating the index, go straight forward. And then I can get the URL typed in. And that's it. It's working without a mapping because it's just assuming lots of data. And then once you create the mapping, you can then populate it with data. And then Elastic will return back all the IDs it's auto-generated. I mean, it's up to you if you want to use your IDs or not. Elastic IDs are quite convenient because it deals with all the duplication. But yeah, there's the... So you create lots of mappings, and then you can view the document, and then you've got paging. And what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to delete one, but then it's going to not. There you go. Basically, it's failing because Elastic isn't real time. So what you do is you try it again and you refresh, and it's fine. But you've just got to be aware that Elastic is not real time. So, are there any questions about that demo? Do you want to see any more of it, or? No? Cool. That's fine. That's not right. Okay, I've got another demo where I've got another example where I've created, it's a dashboard example where all it does is capture impressions on a website and it stores it into a database, and then using a listener or a subscriber will then dump it into Elastic. And this is how I created the mapping in Symfony. It's just a simple command, and it's pretty much the same as bog standard PHP, but obviously with the Symfony sort of sugar. One thing I did do differently with the Symfony one was that I wanted to parse the user agents. I could do it manually if I wanted to, but it was a good example with Elastic because they've got something called pipelines, and that allows you to basically process the data as it comes into the system. And obviously the user agent one will split it out into operating system, browser, version, that sort of thing. So you can see in this one, user agent is the plugin, field is the data. And obviously you've got a description. You could actually have multiple processes in there, and they would work in the order you define them. So here's an example of a document that's been processed by the processor. So you can see the original user agent string at the top, and then you've got the user agent that's a nested object with all the bits that it's broken out. And I like how it's done it. And you've also got the whole document that's come with it as well. And you can also see that that's actually just a URL that you can put in the browser. And if you put question mark pretty at the end of a URL, it'll actually make it nice and pretty like that, as opposed to machine readable, where it's just no white space at all. So the system's generating activity. It's just another command, and all it's doing is it's hitting a fake API that I've created, causing lots of impressions, and then they're being stored. It's pretty simple. It, for some reason, runs incredibly slowly, but it simulates activity, so I didn't really fix it. But, okay. With Symfony, I've created a subscriber, or something that happens after I persist an entity. So you can say when this entity is persisted in MySQL, then ship it off into Elastic. And it's just a case of translating it from one object to another, and then just pushing it in, and then telling it to use the pipeline. And then that's how you build it. Okay. One thing I'm going to be using a lot of in the examples, because I didn't want to have to specify it all the time, is a date time filter. This is how you filter data in Elastic. It's literally that little bit at the bottom where you've got the event date where you're saying greater than a date and less than a certain date. And all I'm doing is later is concatenating that into a string. That is you can also see Elastic's date time maths in there, where it's got now/d. That means now, but rounded to the nearest day, and then minus a day. So I'm saying yesterday to now. And I've also saying yesterday, which is a whole block of time. So I've got minus a day and then plus a day. So I've got today and yesterday examples up there. You can obviously do more than just days. You've got hours. You've got hours, months, years if you want. There's lots of options. In fact, more I could put on this slide. So I've put the URL in there for future reference. But it's a very in-depth page and it's well worth a read. So, how do I get data out of Elastic? Well, what I'm doing is I'm basically saying I want a range, but in this case, I just want total views. I don't need the actual document. So what I'm saying is I want all the documents from a certain range, but don't return them. Just tell me how many there were. That's the most basic way you can use Elastic, is just to get a total count. And you can see there I'm inserting the time option in the range. When I wanted to query the browsers, then that's a little bit more complicated. I've got something called aggregations where it's kind of like a group by in MySQL. Again, I don't want the documents, I just want like a total, or I just want the keywords in fact. And you can see that what I'm doing is I'm filtering out all the documents that are outside the range, and then I'm aggregating based on browser name. And you can see that I'm using keyword just to get the exact match. The size 10 is how many different browsers I wanted to return me. For total sessions, so how many unique people are browsing my website based on IP address, it makes it even a little bit more complicated again, but still nothing too elaborate in Elastic terms. I'm doing the same query filtering, the same size 0, but this time I'm aggregating on IP address, and then I'm doing a sub-aggregation of user agent, and that should give me the right numbers. So, if I can somehow bring this back up, should. So I should be able to say. Because unfortunately my demo didn't actually work. That was the wrong video. So this is Docker Compose booting it up again. And when it's up, I'll then show you what the web interface looks like. But this Docker Compose is actually pretty good because you can say that don't start the application until the database and Elastic have started up. Okay, so this is the actual very basic website. Oops. So this is the dashboard. These are the users, sessions, views, metrics. You can see the actual impression I've just generated on it. So what I need to do is fake some more data. Okay, that's why I don't do live data demos. No? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just do it myself. It's a very basic website. So that's the idea, is that it could show you the popular pages, the browser breakdown, and which operating systems. You could do more, you can go really in depth with Elastic, and you could spend weeks learning about it, but with this sort of information, you could build a really nice system, sort of like within half a day. You could take your existing data, piggyback it using a subscriber, or some other method to just duplicate your data and just play around with it. As Elastic like to say, explore your data. So, what have I missed in Elastic? You've got complex aggregations. You can go pretty deep with that sort of stuff. I've just about got my head around sub-aggregations. You've got scripts where you can basically say, do complex calculations when you're inserting or updating. It's something I haven't touched on yet. You can do clustering. It's easy enough to get the two linked, but you've got to get your head around how clusters work and how it approximates the data. XPack is their paid support, their paid plugins, sort of like for security, that sort of thing. It's quite expensive and it's per server, so I kind of haven't touched on it at all. Upgrading, you can move from one version of Elastic to another, but you've got to be careful. You can't go from too far ahead because it keeps track of which version created each index. So when you upgrade, you kind of need to destroy your index and recreate it. There are ways of doing this, but it's something I'm not going into today. And again, you've got re-indexing. So if you wanted to rename a field, how would you deal with that? Well, there's a re-indexing thing, endpoint in Elastic, that allows you to sort of copy data from one index to another index. It's very handy, but again, it's something to look into. And there is a lot more Elastic stuff in that I haven't even touched, so. Are there any questions?
So is Elastic running its own web server for the REST API, or is that actually something you can access at a slightly lower level to run it underneath your own application?
As far as I'm aware, there is nothing lower than the REST API. I believe that's how you interact with it. I think plugins can interact with it at a lower level, but you pretty much have to access it that way, and it's pretty quick.
You have to restrict that somehow.
Yes, it's very open by default. There is a third-party plugin that I can't remember the name of that gives you some basic security. I did try installing it, but I didn't get very far with it yet. So, yeah, definitely firewall. Cool.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
That was actually Daniel's first conference talk as well, so I think big round of applause for actually setting up that. So, you're probably all raring to get to the pub, so I'll keep it short. PHP Hampshire do have IRC and Slack channels, so go on the website, check it out, come and join us. There's normally a bit of fun going on IRC. The raffle winners today, the Amazon voucher is going to Scott Austin. I'll email that to you shortly, and the PHP Storm license was won by Jason Butwell. So I'll send that across. There are a whole host of other PHP user groups around. Go to php.ug. There's some in Dorset, Brighton, everywhere. Lots of them are actually sponsored by Spectrum IT as well, so hit them up. PHP South Coast, again, June 9th and 10th. I've got my tickets. I've convinced my entire company to get all their devs to go, so if you can go, it's really, really worthwhile. And our next talk is going to be on DDD by Nigel Greenway. So we're looking forward to that. And shall we get to the pub? Sounds great. Cheers, guys.